Hey everyone, today in our Coaches Roundtable, we're talking all about SMART goals. So hopefully you guys find this helpful. Enjoy the video. Hi guys, thanks for joining us today on another edition of the Coaches Roundtable. Coach Dan here with Coach Charlie and Coach Izzy. So today we wanted to talk a little bit about SMART goals. So with Coach One-to-Ones starting soon and the Back at It Challenge, we just thought it was a good time to quickly touch on goal setting and something you may have heard of known as SMART goals. So SMART is an acronym standing for specific, measurable, achievable, relevant or realistic, and timely. So we're just going to quickly go through all of those, and hopefully this will be helpful. All right, guys, so the first thing we're going to mention is the S, so being specific. So if you guys want to quickly talk about what making a goal specific could mean.
Yeah, absolutely. So often I think when we come to fitness, it can be a bit of a big picture, can't it? You kind of see what you want life to look like in the future. So when we say specific, it's more pinpointing exactly what will help you to get to that end point. So, if you want to be, just generally healthier, what does that healthier mean to you? Like, what does that specifically entail in your mind to be healthier?
So it's like healthier means I cook my own food Monday through to Friday, and might, go out for a meal on a Saturday and Sunday. Or if it is, a fitness goal, I want to reduce my 5K time to sub 35 minutes, for example. And that's something, if you know exactly what you're aiming for, it gives you much more focus than I want to get faster at running. So it's about, and then that's your baby steps that help you then move on to your next goal, and you kind of set yourselves little milestones. Without being specific, you probably won't get there because you don't know what you're aiming for.
100%. I think sometimes people use that analogy of almost like setting off without knowing, setting off in a car without knowing where you're going. You might get there, but if you don't actually have a plan, then it's hard to know where to go. And I think putting numbers to a lot of goals are good. Like you mentioned, getting the 5K time under a specific time, then you know whether you've achieved that goal or not.
Yeah.
So when we keep our goals really broad, then how can we know if, I'm done now, or I've achieved it, or do I have to still keep going? So I think having, the first one being specific, I think is great and it's important. And even though, as you said, Izzy, we might have these bigger overarching goals, we can try and narrow it down and get a bit more specific, then usually we'll be a bit more successful as well. Which kind of goes on to the next one, which is measurable. So measurable, if you want to tackle that idea.
Measurable is, again, if you haven't got a specific goal, you can't measure it. So if it is about the time you want to achieve that 5K in, then you have to be timing yourself. Otherwise, you won't know. If it's about, maybe a weight loss goal, then you do have to step on the scales or take some photos to compare yourself. There has to be ways for you to look at your journey along the way. I think that's how I interpret measurable. You have to be able to set your goal and then be able to look at the data, I guess, to know whether you're getting there or not.
Yeah, absolutely. Just as Coach Charlie said, just being able to measure it. So whatever it be, whether you want to get stronger, if that means, keeping record of what weights you're using and where you're progressing, just keeping that data is the main way. If you can't measure it, how do you know what's going on?
Yeah, 100%. And nowadays we're lucky we have like quite a lot of apps that can help us. You obviously have the Orange Theory one if you're going for your runs and things. but also people use apps nowadays to track workouts, food, sleep. A lot of those things can be measured a bit easier nowadays. And if you're doing a challenge as well, you want to make sure you are sort of measuring your progress, ticking it off. How many have I done? If I've committed to doing X amount of classes, have I done those classes? Or have I been eating, or whatever your goal is? So yeah, tracking and measuring, super important. Next up is the A, which is attainable, or some people say achievable. So again, if one of you wants to just touch on that quickly.
Yeah, so in regards to this part of the acronym, it kind of refers to the amount of time that you have for this specific goal. So for instance, if you're giving yourself 8 weeks to kind of, get from this point to this point when you're planning this out, if you're going from, 0, it might not be achievable to get to 100 when within those 8 weeks. So it's breaking it down into something that, you can fit into that time.
Yeah, exactly that. You might have one big long-term goal, but you've got to set smaller ones to get to that point. Set yourself a path to get to where you want to be. Break it down. It's got to work to your lifestyle. If you don't set an achievable goal, you won't. That's really demotivating. If you set yourself small steps along the way and you can tick them off, you're going to feel a lot better about the journey you're on.
100%, definitely. I think that's very important about you touching on motivation, and that sometimes is something, if you're not sure, maybe you can ask one of us, what's a good mid-term step, or a short-term step, or just helping to take a step back and look at it from a different angle. The next up is R, which is goal being realistic, or sometimes people also would use the R as relevant. So if we touch on the realistic part first, Izzy, if you want to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, sure thing. So realistic, it's similar kind of to the last one. I just touched on that with achievable. Kind of obviously it's that big ballpark figure, but when we talk about realistic, I think it's more about that personal side of it. So is it realistic to you? We've all got massive goals, but it kind of, I always think A and R kind of go together. That there's the side of it as, can you achieve it in that time, and then there's the realistic side of it, is that a goal that's realistic to be achieved at the moment for you. So it's always kind of starting where we're at and taking the steps after that, rather than trying to jump ahead and start further on.
Exactly. Totally agree. Just, you've got to take a look at your lifestyle and how much time you can commit to these goals, because they do take time.
Yeah, I think I definitely understand if you have any barriers or anything that could, impede you getting that goal achieved. I think sometimes people refer to the R as relevant, and my understanding of that is it's usually linked into, is this goal relevant to your overall values as a person, or other maybe long-term bigger goals that you have, and does it fit in with that? For a lot of people, it probably does. Probably, if, for example, if we're talking health and fitness, you probably having a healthy lifestyle probably coincides with lots of other goals you may have related to your overall personal health, development, life. But sometimes it may not be. It may conflict with other things that you're trying to work on or that you value. So it's important as well sometimes just to see if it fits you, if that goal fits you. And then lastly, we have T, which is for timely or time bound, sometimes people say. So coaches, again, if you want to just quickly touch on that.
Yeah, sure. So timely, just, we need to set a time frame. Basically, any goal, it's great to have goals, but if you don't set a time frame to them, what keeps you motivated, what keeps you going and working towards it? If you've got 3 years to achieve something, there's no sense of urgency as much as, say, if you give yourself 3 weeks to achieve something. So it's just kind of breaking it down into a time frame that firstly will work for the goal, but then as well will keep you motivated.
Yeah,
100%.
definitely.
Yeah, so now we've talked about this a little bit. I think now's a great time for people to be thinking a little bit about making some SMART goals, and also getting on the challenge, because in a way, a lot of the challenges are essentially SMART goals. There's a time frame. We're being specific about it, and you can measure them. So, great time for people to just have another think about their goals. Obviously, you can come down with us, book in those one-to-ones, or get in on the challenge. So hopefully, everybody found this helpful, and we look forward to seeing everybody crushing those SMART goals.
Woo.
Woo woo!
All right, guys. Thank you.
Bye, team.
Oh.
I also wanted to try and answer a question we had from one of our members. This question was sent in by Louise, who asks, how come sometimes I experience lower back pain during leg raising type movements? I wanted to try and talk about that a little bit and explain reasons why that may be happening. So everybody in their spine normally has a natural amount of curve, or lordotic curve, at the base of the spine. So some amount is normal and necessary, but generally speaking, we don't want to over-exaggerate that curve or have excessive movement through the lower back. Generally speaking as well, when we are performing movements and we're looking to protect the back, it's really important to be engaging our core muscles so that this whole area is rigid and supported, and that extra stress does not fall on to our lower back muscles and the lower back region. When performing leg raises, it's really important to keep tension on the abs throughout the movement, especially on the downward phase. You don't want to treat this lowering of the legs as just a time where gravity takes over and wins, but you want to be making sure you're maintaining tension and under control as you lower the legs down towards the ground. The more you lower the legs, the more difficult it can be to maintain tension on the abdominals, so you may need to shorten your range of motion. Now this is still going to be working fine, you just may have to limit a little bit the range of motion, and we should always work within our limits. Over time, as you get better accustomed to recruiting your abdominal muscles, you may be able to recruit your abs through a longer range of motion and perform without any lower back pain. You can also bend your knees, bringing your feet in a little bit closer to you, as by bringing those feet in a little bit closer, it will make the movement a little bit easier. Similar to how if I was holding a weight in my hand, if I hold it here, it's going to be a lot easier than if I'm holding it way out here. Okay, the further away it is from the muscle that's working, the more challenging that movement is going to be. If you're struggling to engage your ab muscles, a couple of things I like to remind people of is first is to try and draw the belly button in towards the spine, or essentially the lower back in towards the ground. The other thing is maybe before you start the movement, take a shallow breath out and try and reconnect with your ab muscles. Feel them for a second, and once you get that feeling, try and latch onto that. You don't want to be holding your breath throughout the movement, but once you've been able to create that tension in your abdominal muscles, try to maintain it, especially during the lowering phase of the movement. So I hope all of that made sense and those tips are helpful. Let us know, Louise, how you find that. If anybody else has any other questions, please leave a comment. We'd love to hear your questions and we'd love to help out. See you soon.